The first cough echoed through the sterile halls of the medical dome like a blasphemy. Seren Lasker froze mid-chew. The protein bar hung from his mouth like a limp flag as he glanced around the observation deck of the Cygna IV Research Outpost. A dozen alien medics, assistants, and researchers paused what they were doing. The silence was immediate, heavy, and accusatory. "Sorry," Seren mumbled. "Seasonal thing. Dry air." He coughed again. This time, it wasn't just a cough. It was a deep, rattling bark from somewhere in his chest, the kind that turned heads in restaurants and made strangers inch away. A tall, bluish medic named Drank swiveled its eye stalks toward him. "You are exhibiting symptoms of pulmonary irregularity," Drank said. "You must be relocated to quarantine sector Delta." Seren shoved the rest of the bar into his mouth and chewed slowly, trying to buy time. "It's just allergies," he said with a full mouth. "Earth has pollen. This place is dust. It messes with my throat sometimes. I'm not infectious. No Earth-origin pathogen has been certified as non-infectious until cleared by the Interstellar Medical Council," Dranks replied. "You will comply." Before Seren could protest again, two smaller medics with luminescent green skin approached him with a containment stretcher. Their movements were swift and efficient. "Well, okay, hang on." Seren raised his hands. "I'm not sick. I've been stationed here for 8 months without a single incident." "You coughed," Dranks said. "Once. Twice." Seren sighed as his feet left the floor, lifted by the containment field. "You aliens really need to chill." "We do not chill. We isolate." The quarantine ward was deep underground, beneath 10 meters of reinforced mineral composite. It smelled faintly of antiseptic and humming wires. Seren sat on the cot, arms crossed, while an array of sensors circled his head like curious insects. A mechanical arm sprayed a cool mist against his chest, and he flinched. "Diagnostic in progress," a voice said from the wall. "I told you it's allergies. I get them every winter and spring. This dome's filtration system is dry as a bone." Dranks entered through the sanitation lock, a clipboard-like device in his hand. "You will remain here for observation," he said. "Your symptoms are not consistent with any known seasonal adaptation." "I'm a human," Seren said. "You think your archives have everything about us? We're weird. Our bodies do weird stuff." Dranks turned to a screen. "Your heart rate increased after the first cough. Your body temperature rose by 0.7 degrees. Your white blood cell count spiked." "That's because I was panicking," Seren replied. "Because I knew you'd do this." "An irrational fear response?" "No, a logical one. You people quarantined a woman last month because she sneezed during a solar flare. She was later confirmed to be carrying a dormant strain of the Andolian flu. She had hay fever." Dranks blinked slowly. "You will remain here for 72 Earth hours." Seren groaned and leaned back against the cot. 2 hours in, he started pacing. 5 hours in, he began pulling at his hair. By the 12th hour, he cracked open the wall panel above the sanitation sink and started rerouting the water line to make it hot enough to steam. "What are you doing?" the wall voice asked. "Demonstrating a basic principle of thermodynamics and human comfort," Seren muttered. By hour 20, Seren began to shiver, not from fever but boredom. He coughed again, just once, and the lights flickered yellow in alarm. "False alarm," he yelled. "Still seasonal." Dranks returned with 2 more medics, each armed with scanning arms and portable analyzers. They surrounded Seren and began a new round of testing. Seren spread his arms. "Go ahead. Swab my lungs, take my blood, scan my spleen. I'm telling you, it's just how I adjust to new environments." One of the smaller medics inserted a nasal probe. Seren jerked back. "What a guy next time." "Testing mucus viscosity," the medic said flatly. As the hours ticked by, Seren's samples were shuttled off to 4 different labs. Reports came back inconclusive. One suggested a mild upper respiratory irritation, another declared no detectable pathogens, while a third flagged unidentified organic compounds in his bloodstream. "These are vitamins," Seren explained. "You ever heard of B-complex? My body needs them." Drank stared at him. "You supplement your biology with external compounds." "Yeah, because we adapt. You know, instead of panicking when someone sneezes." Dranks didn't respond. Instead, he left the room. On the second day, Seren woke up with a sore throat and a headache. He wasn't sure if it was from the recycled air, the stress, or maybe he was actually getting sick. He avoided coughing. He drank water. He even meditated. But the third cough slipped out around noon. This time, it was wet. Alarms triggered again, louder and more urgent. Within minutes, the entire ward went into lockdown. The bed restrained him automatically. A new team of medics in full isolation suits arrived with pressurized equipment. Seren coughed once more and then said, "Okay, maybe not just allergies." He was placed into a full containment pod, suspended in a gel-like fluid that allowed breathing but restricted movement. A voice from the speaker said, "You will remain in biostasis until a diagnosis is confirmed." The hours blurred. He drifted in and out of sleep. When he woke, he was in a new room, this one brighter, warmer, with circulating air. Drank stood nearby with a tablet. "You were correct," Drank said. "About what?" "Your infection is not transmissible. It is a non-pathogenic irritation of the bronchial passages, caused by," he paused, "insufficient environmental humidity." Seren raised an eyebrow. "So, allergies. Your terminology is overly simplistic, but accurate." Dranks looked annoyed. "You may resume normal activities." Seren coughed again, just to be petty. Dranks flinched. Back in the main dome, Seren returned to duty. But the incident wasn't over. Word spread that a human's body had triggered a full medical lockdown. The other species aboard the outpost began treating him differently. He heard whispers in the corridors. Some researchers now scheduled meetings remotely. A brilliant technician refused to shake his hand. "You're still contagious," the technician said. "No, I'm not," Seren replied. "You people just don't know what to do with a little phlegm." Over the next week, things escalated. A group of medics requested constant biomonitoring of all humans on the station. Seren was subjected to daily scans. A public advisory was issued: monitor all terrestrial species for unclassified excretory anomalies. He filed a formal complaint. The station commander, a tall, crystalline entity named Alex, summoned him to a private meeting. "You were causing unrest," Alex said. "I coughed," Seren replied. "You disrupted over 20 researchers, 2 labs, and initiated an unnecessary Level 3 quarantine protocol. I didn't ask to get locked up. I told them what it was. Your physiology is too unpredictable." Seren leaned forward. "Then maybe learn it. We've been allies for over a decade. You've got archives on 3,000 species, but you still don't understand how a human immune system works." Alex was silent for a long moment. Then, "We will initiate a human physiology review." "Good. Start with sinuses." But the tension didn't break. One morning, Seren awoke with chest pain. Real pain. Not the scratchy throat or dry cough from before. It was sharp, like needles in his lungs. He sat up and collapsed immediately. Dranks was called in again. This time, Seren didn't protest. "He's hypoxic," one medic said. Dranks scanned him. "Possible pleuritis. Get him to Medbay Alpha." Seren barely heard them. His vision blurred. He felt cold, and his breathing was shallow. They strapped him to a gurney and moved fast through the corridors. In the medbay, they ran extensive tests: CT scans, blood panels, oxygen diffusion metrics. The diagnosis came quickly: viral pleuritis, aggravated by environmental stress. "How did this happen?" Dranks asked. The initial symptoms were benign. They were the warning signs. The attending human physician, Dr. Amira Laren, replied. "You ignored them." Dranks hesitated. He claimed it was seasonal, and you assumed that meant harmless. But seasonal in humans doesn't mean non-serious. You've been treating symptoms, not systems. Seren, pale and weak, managed a whisper. "Told you I was weird." He was bedded in for 6 days. Breathing treatments, antivirals, and rest. The pain faded by the 4th day, but his muscles remained sore, and his endurance was shot. He couldn't stand for longer than a few minutes at a time. When he finally sat up without help, Drank stood at the foot of his bed. "I underestimated the complexity of your biology," Dranks admitted, "and overestimated your clarity of communication." Seren gave a faint nod. "I'll take that as an apology. It is a statement of fact." Close enough. By the time he returned to duty, the station had installed new humidifiers in all human quarters. A memo was issued, titled Understanding Human Respiratory Variability. It included diagrams of sinus cavities and a glossary of terms like post-nasal drip. Seren coughed during a briefing the next day. Everyone flinched. He held up a small card. "Relax. Certified non-lethal cough. Cleared by medical." No one laughed, but at least no one ran away. Seren was standing in front of a vending unit that had just swallowed his meal credits when the floor beneath him gave a subtle lurch. A low, hydraulic groan swept through the corridor, followed by a gentle dimming of the lights above. The station's systems hiccuped for barely 2 seconds, just long enough for the machine to reset and forget about his order. "Great," he muttered, slapping the panel with a flat palm. "Can we not have a single uneventful day?" Down the corridor, a technician with translucent skin and a long cranial ridge peered around the corner. "That was not scheduled," the technician said. "Did you manipulate the power system again?" Seren turned, pointing at the dormant unit. "I was trying to get lunch, not reroute a reactor. Do I look like I'm carrying a voltage converter? You once constructed a portable steam humidifier from surgical tubing and a cafeteria kettle. That was a survival necessity. This is just a sandwich." The technician didn't respond, already tapping on a wrist console and walking off. The interruption settled into a quiet murmur across the station. Systems returned to normal, but the blip had stirred something. By mid-cycle, a full diagnostic sweep was underway, and Seren's lunch remained elusive. At 1700 hours, Commander Escalates summoned the senior personnel to the Central Operations Atrium. Seren arrived half a minute late, still chewing a protein cube he'd begged off a sympathetic intern. Escalates stood beside a large projection of the station's infrastructure, a lattice of colored corridors and subsystem nodes. "We experienced a transient gravitational fluctuation," Escalates said, "localized to Deck 7. The anomaly resolved itself within seconds, but it destabilized several magnetic dampeners." Seren stepped forward. "Grav fluctuation? We're in geosync. There's nothing out here that should be pulling on us." "That is what we intend to determine," Escalates replied. "You will join the field crew investigating the outer ring stabilizers. I'm not certified for extravehicular ops. You've modified 6 different environmental systems beyond their design tolerances. I believe you will adapt." Seren glanced at Dranks, who stood rigid near the rear of the group. The medic didn't blink, just adjusted the strap on its data harness. 20 minutes later, Seren was in a suit, strapped into a maintenance shuttle with 2 engineers, one insectoid, the other a humanoid with 6 fingers on each hand working the controls. The shuttle detached with a hard jolt and banked toward the outer scaffolding of the station. The stars beyond were motionless and cruel, indifferent to the fragile breathers clinging to their artificial shells. As they passed the docking pylons, the 6-fingered engineer pointed at a structural beam. "There," she said. "That connector was under torque stress it shouldn't have experienced. That's where the field dip started." Seren leaned forward. "What's the material composition?" "Titanium ceramic alloy, reinforced with polyphase lattice. Rated for 12,000 kilonewtons of dynamic tension. And it bent. Hairline deformation. Not visible to the naked eye, but it's there." The shuttle latched onto the outer ring with a magnetic clamp. Seren pulled himself into the airlock and suited up fully, checking the seals twice. The cold out there would shatter bone and boil eyes if the suit failed. Outside, the silence was immediate and total. Not even the hum of electronics, just the thudding of his own heart and the faint rasp of air through the rebreather. He moved along the beam, boots sticking magnetically, until he reached the connector. Beneath the surface, a section of the alloy had distorted inward, like something had pressed on it from the void. "Looks like pressure from the outside," he said over comms. "But there's no debris field. Nothing shows up on active scans." "Nothing," the insectoid replied. Seren squinted at a faint shimmer near the connector. He tapped his visor to increase contrast. A fine layer of frost was forming on the surface, curling in delicate spirals. "There's an energy differential here. Microthermal patterns inconsistent with vacuum exposure." "Explain," came Alex's voice over comms. "It's like something brushed against the hull and left a trace. But it's not physical, more like a field distortion." Back in the shuttle, they decontaminated and returned to the station. The engineers rushed off with samples and sensor logs. Seren headed for the debrief, but was intercepted by Dranks outside the corridor. "You are exhibiting elevated cortisol levels," Dranks said without preamble. "Yeah, I was dangling over nothing with a malfunctioning beam under my feet. That tends to spike stress." Dranks held out a scanner. "I am authorized to issue a secondary health review post-EVA. Please comply." Seren sighed and extended his arm. "You ever have a moment where you think the universe is poking you just to see what breaks?" Dranks didn't respond, but the scanner beeped 3 times. You require intravenous rehydration. Electrolyte imbalance may affect cognition. That's just a fancy way of saying I'm thirsty. It is a precise assessment of your suboptimal condition. They reached the med bay, where a nurse, this one with a neck that segmented when she turned her head, prepared the 4. Seren sat quietly, watching the bag fill with a pinkish fluid. New formula, he asked. Modified for higher sodium retention, the nurse replied. Your species loses essential salts faster than any known carbon-based life form. Yeah, we sweat. It's not a defect, it's a strategy. Dranks approached, holding a data pad. There is a pattern developing. Your system reacts to minor environmental changes in exaggerated ways. That's not a bug either, Seren said. It's why we survive things we shouldn't. Cold, heat, altitude, our bodies freak out just enough to adapt. You treat instability as an advantage. Exactly. Dranks looked unsettled. That is biologically disruptive. It's the reason we outlive predators that were faster, stronger, smarter. We don't excel. We persist. That night, Seren lay awake, staring at the ceiling of his quarters. The lights were dimmed, the air recycled to a comfortable level. Yet something itched in the back of his mind. The shimmer on the beam, the frost curls, the graph pulse. At 0300, the station shuddered again. This time, it lasted 5 seconds. Sirens wailed softly through the halls. Seren was already half-dressed when the alert panel cracked to life. All personnel report to designated emergency posts. Hull integrity review in progress. Outside the corridor, a group of scientists were arguing about gravitational harmonics. Seren ignored them and bolted toward the operations deck. When he arrived, the projection was back up. This time, the distortion was mapped in red, snaking from the outer ring inward, like a bruise unfolding. Alex turned to him. We need you to join the observation team monitoring atmospheric readings near the lower ventral stabilizers. Seren blinked. You think the station's being compressed? We do not yet understand the source. But the deformation pattern corresponds to a rolling pressure wave. From what? We are attempting to determine that. He joined a 3-person team in a pressurized crawler, descending to the lowest maintenance levels. The air grew denser as they moved down, not physically, but perceptually, like gravity had moods. At the stabilizer port, one of the technicians placed a sensor against the hull. There's oscillation, she said. Low frequency. It's resonating inside the structure itself. Could it be a feedback loop? Seren asked. No. It's not originating from the station. Seren placed a hand on the wall. It was vibrating, barely perceptible. But the rhythm was unmistakable, like a slow, deliberate pulse. Something's trying to communicate, he said. The others looked at him. No one laughed. Back on the main deck, Seren found Dranks waiting. You should rest, Dranks said. There's no time. Something's pressing on us from outside, and we don't know what it is. You are not structurally necessary to containment operations. No, but I'm the only one who's felt it physically. Whatever this is, it interacts with us differently. I might be able to sense what the instruments can't. Dranks hesitated. That is not scientifically rigorous. It's human. Dranks stared at him. What do you propose? Seren grinned. We go back out. And this time we knock. The external airlock clanked shut behind Seren with a heavy finality, and the silence on the outer hull was thicker than before. This time, the mission parameters were different. Not diagnostics. Not repairs. Contact. The tool pack strapped to his chest was lighter than usual, deliberately stripped of anything that might interfere with electromagnetic fields. No cutting torches. No comm boosters. Just a basic sensor wand, 3 adhesive vibro plates, and a handheld acoustic resonator the engineers had whipped together in 4 hours using a pressure gauge, a tuning fork, and something that used to be part of a food synthesizer. They'd called it speculative. Seren called it hopeful. He crouched low on the stabilizer beam, anchoring himself with a magnetic tether. The shimmer had returned. It hovered just off the surface like heat waves above asphalt, but colder, pulling instead of pushing. His visor's thermal feed showed nothing. No differential, no data, but he could feel it in his chest, a low, dragging sensation like the beginning of a yawn he couldn't finish. He pressed the first vibro plate onto the alloy. It hummed softly, calibrating. Then the second, 3 meters down. The third, directly centered between them. He clicked on the resonator and waited. The response was immediate. A low, quivering tone pulsed through the plates, reverberating outward into the void. It wasn't mechanical. It felt more like tension being released from a string held too long. His suit registered no pressure change, but his ears popped inside the helmet. Something was shifting just beyond the reach of the visible spectrum. "Seren, do you copy?" came Alex's voice in his ear. "Still here." Something answered, not in words, more like a vibration with intent. Define intent. It adjusted to match our frequency. On the third pulse, it narrowed the waveband. "That's not random. Proceed with caution." He tapped the resonator again. A higher tone this time, sharp, brief, pointed. The plates adjusted automatically, sinking. The shimmer thickened, pulling closer. Then the hole beneath his boots flexed, not dangerously, not violently, but like someone pressing a fingertip against a balloon. Inside the station, alarm stayed quiet, but Alex's voice came back, tighter this time. "We're registering displacement along the outer anchor points. You may have triggered a reaction. No breach. Negative. But the structure is under strain. Then I'm switching tactics." He pulled out a strip of reflective foil from the emergency toolkit. Folding it into a triangle, he stuck it to the hull just beside the shimmer. Then, using the back of his glove, he traced a crude spiral into the frost layer nearby. The shimmer reacted, instantly coiling inward, mimicking the shape. Then it stopped. "Data feed just dropped by 80%, said the engineer monitoring the sensors. "It's learning," Seren muttered. "Or interpreting." He took a breath, then placed his bare palm, protected only by the outermost layer of the suit, against the alloy. Nothing happened for 3 seconds. Then the shimmer touched the edge of his glove. Pain flared up his arm like firecrackers going off under his skin. His veins felt like they were filling with static. His vision swam with shapes he knew weren't real: spirals, grids, fractals that twisted in on themselves. Then it all stopped. He gasped, yanked his hand back, and nearly lost his footing before the tether caught him. "Status." Alex's voice had gone flat. "I'm okay," Seren managed. "No breach. No trauma." But it touched back. He pulled himself carefully along the beam and re-entered the airlock. Medical was waiting for him before the cycle finished repressurizing. Inside, Dranks was already scanning before Seren could get the helmet off. "I experienced acute nerve excitation, but no tissue damage," Seren said. "Vitals are stable. No fibrillation." "Let me measure," Dranks replied, running a probe across his forearm. "Elevated neural conductivity. Unusual for brief contact. You are sure there was no membrane rupture?" "No breach." "It went through the suit's outer field but didn't damage it." Dranks turned to the wall console. "Your nervous system spiked in a pattern unlike any stress response. Almost rhythmic. Like a message." Dranks paused. "That would be an anthropocentric interpretation." Seren didn't argue. He lay back on the diagnostic cot as the med scanner cycled again. "Your body is reacting as if it experienced a full REM cycle in under 5 seconds, Dranks added. "That is not biologically coherent. I saw patterns. Shapes I couldn't describe. And I knew they weren't mine. It was like someone painted them into my mind." Dranks didn't answer. The probe in his hand dimmed, and he turned to make notes. By early morning, the engineering team had finished analyzing the vibration logs. The readings showed harmonic interference, but with an underlying structure that repeated every 12 seconds. Not a mechanical loop. A signal. Seren stood in the operations room beside Alex and the others as the data streamed across the screen. "We think it's some kind of field-based entity," the lead engineer said. "It doesn't emit mass or heat, but it manipulates pressure and resonance." "Alive?" Alex asked. "Not as we understand it, but reactive." Seren stepped forward. "It didn't want to breach the station. It was trying to reach something. Me, maybe. Or just anything that would respond." Alex turned to him. "What do you propose?" "We reply. Not with pulses. With patterns. Show it that we recognize the structure. Your biology is not a reliable interface. It's the only one that worked." The room fell quiet. Then Alex gave a slow nod. "Proceed." An hour later, in one of the research domes, they laid a thin layer of reactive gel across the inside of a transparent panel. Seren stood behind it, hand resting near the edge, as a series of electromagnetic pulses vibrated through the gel. Shapes formed: spirals, diamonds, waves. Then, on the other side, the shimmer reappeared. Not large, not overwhelming, just there. It moved slowly across the panel. The gel pulsed in response. Two patterns overlapped, then aligned. Seren felt the same static through his spine, but no pain this time. Just a pressure behind his eyes, like being watched from inside his own skull. Then the shimmer faded. The panel fell still. Dranks entered the room a moment later with his tablet in hand. Your vitals remained stable throughout, he said. No neural disruption. It saw us, Seren whispered. And now it's gone. Alex arrived shortly after. Sensors show no anomalies. The field is dispersing. It wanted acknowledgement. That's all. Alex studied him for a moment. You engaged with a non-corporeal force of unknown origin using nothing but instinct and a piece of foil. Seren shrugged. Seemed like the right tool. Dranks turned to Alex. We will need to monitor him for at least 24 more hours. Secondary effects may not manifest immediately. Run your tests, Seren said. But I feel fine. By late afternoon, the station had returned to full operational status. No further distortions. No pulses. Maintenance crews resecured the anchor points, and the shimmer never returned. Seren sat in the mess hall, finally eating a proper meal. Across from him, the six-fingered engineer sat down. You know, she said, some of us thought you were just reckless. I am, Seren said with a mouthful of noodles. But it's a strategy. She grinned. Well, whatever that was, it's gone. We're clear. He nodded. Sometimes, you just have to show the universe you're listening. Dranks appeared beside the table. You are cleared for active duty. No anomalies remain. Seren raised his fork in mock salute. Thanks, document. Dranks hesitated. Your adaptability is inefficient, but occasionally effective. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. I'm not known for kindness. Seren leaned back with a satisfied sigh. You're improving. The mess hall door closed behind Dranks, and the station lights shifted to evening mode. Seren took another bite of his meal, the hum of the station steady and uninterrupted. For once, no one flinched when he coughed.